What's up? Welcome in. Hoge and Jahns with you. Back-to-back big draft episodes for you this week. Coming through with the Beast and Dane Brugler today. Just really good draft content. Pretty much the best you can get right now. And what's up, Johnsy? How you doing?
Good. What's going on? I love this draft talk.
Yeah.
Usually, there's a point during it where I'm like, oh, more draft talk. But I'm not there yet. Maybe the day of the draft I'll be there, but then you get selections.
Well, and full admission this year, I got it kind of late into the draft party this year, a lot later than I normally am. Just because of random stuff going on, changing jobs and moving and life and shit like that.
Life.
Yeah, it happens. So I feel like I'm just catching up, feeling pretty good. We did some wide receiver breakdowns for CHGO this morning, a bunch of videos. That was fun to do. So I feel like I'm getting in the swing of things. And obviously our two awesome draft guests yesterday helped. So if you, for some reason, missed that episode, go back, make sure you get that one. And then today having Dane on should be good.
Yeah, Deontay and Nick were awesome yesterday. Do you still do your mini board?
Are you talking about on the whiteboard?
Yeah. Yes, that small.
I don't know. There's still time. I might put it together this year.
If you're new to our show, watching and whatnot, Adam Hoge used to do this draft board that he would compile. First and second round? But it was like this mini dry erase board.
Yeah.
Like the size that you would use if you're coaching JV basketball and had to draw plays on.
Yeah. Or what we might have on the sideline. Football games.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
What, are you making fun of it because it was too small?
The mini board, yes.
Was it too small, the board?
No. Just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, I know. You know what I last used that for, actually, was last year when we knew the Bears were going to be getting a new quarterback. I had it was half. It was actually thirds because it was possible free agent signings, possible trade targets, possible draft picks. So
the Bears themselves had a board like that in Ryan Pace's office.
Yeah, you make fun of it, but
that is a ceiling to floor dry erase board on the wall of Ryan Pace's office, or now Ryan Poles' office.
Okay. I'm not investing in a ceiling to floor
whiteboard. Check out my Justin Fields draft story last year. They actually talk about staring at that board when they went over the trade options and all that stuff. But now they got Justin Fields.
Anyway, who cares?
Oh, Bob cares. Bob cares.
You know what was awesome? The guys I used to do radio stuff with at Wisconsin, student radio. Okay, there was four guys that were a year older, right? That went on to graduate a year ahead of us before we kind of took over everything in our class. But they all lived together too. They were really close at his apartment, and they painted an entire wall with that chalkboard paint that basically turns your wall into a chalkboard.
Yeah.
And we watched the draft there that year. I think that was the Cedric Benson draft that year. And they would they had I think we all did a mock for the first round. We had side bets going on. I think we were tracking how many beers we were drinking at the same time. It was awesome.
I like that.
That might be my favorite draft.
We once did, speaking of drafts, a fantasy baseball draft in one of the school classrooms at St. Norbert College. They would leave these rooms open, and we went into one of the larger classrooms at night, brought some beer, and we hired one of our friends who wasn't going to do the draft. We hired them, paid them through beer, to write all the names in chalk on the board. So we all sat at a table. We moved the desks around. We all sat at different little tables. There were 12 of us. And he ran the chalkboards. So all 6 of the chalkboards were full with Albert Pujols. Who else is that? Who was the second baseman from the Rangers who was really good? Hank Blaylock. There's a name back.
Hank Blaylock.
There's a throwback name. when all the when Eric Chavez was a good baseball player, those were the names on the board. I got Pujols that year. Remember that?
Oh, that's pretty good.
Memories.
He could play baseball a little bit.
Memories. He was good. Oh, he was a top 3 pick back then.
All right, a couple good draft stories there. All right, follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. Welcome in. You can read us. I'm at allchgo.com. Johnsy's on The Athletic, theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns. All right, one thing I wanted to get to before we dive into the draft talk with Dane Brugler was an interesting interview Matt Eberflus did with Chris Collinsworth on Collinsworth's podcast. It was 40 minutes long. It was a very long conversation. There were a couple things in there that I thought were a little bit revealing, to be honest. And I don't want to spoil it all, but there some actually offensive stuff that I found really interesting. One is he said that Justin Fields has, obviously been in the building last week and a half, 2 weeks or so for meetings and all that stuff that's been going on with the offseason program. You already know that. But he said he's already at the stage where he can help teach it to some of the offensive.
Go ahead.
What?
I'm just having flashbacks to Nagy 202, but go on.
Oh, yeah. Well, the problem was that Mitch never mastered 202.
Was there actually a 202?
I think the problem was they were on 401 or 402 or 404.
But only Matt Nagy was, but go on.
Right,
Sorry,
exactly. I know.
I'm completely getting off topic, but that's just what immediately came to mind. But
yeah,
this is great for Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack.
So, classic. Here's the headline. He said, "This is Justin Fields' team." I think he's already earned that right. It's already how he's acting. That's how, and with the new coaching staff, I found it interesting that they said that that plainly and clearly that it's Justin Fields' team.
My favorite part about that comment is that there is, call it conversation in Bears social media land, that seems to believe that this coaching staff, this scouting staff, this personnel department headed by Ryan Poles does not believe in Justin Fields.
Well, part of that's because Florio went on the radio and said that yesterday.
I understand maybe the argument that they haven't invested a lot in him, or around him, I should say. But that, you got to look at the bigger picture of what the Bears are trying to do. Who was it yesterday? Was it Deontay Lee or who laid it out perfectly for us? Brad Spielberger. Just the conversations we've had with these guys the past couple of days is just about how they are clearing the books. They are getting rid of the contracts that Ryan Pace had guys sign. And this is going to be a process. They're not spending right away. That spending should come next year. But I have never been under the impression that this coaching staff, that Matt Eberflus, that Ian Cunningham, the assistant GM, that GM Ryan Poles does not believe in Justin Fields. They took this job partially because they believe in the kid. Give it time.
Yeah. I'm not buying that at all. I think if you listen to this interview with Eberflus and Collinsworth, that it pretty much debunks that. So, just something to keep in mind there. Here's what I kind of found really interesting, though, Johns, was we're all trying to picture what this Luke Getsy offense will be. Now, this was just one specific example, but Collinsworth did a good job of kind of teeing him up on trying to explain what you can do with this outside zone run scheme that they're going to run. And he broke it down from the defensive perspective on how it can be tough to defend, especially when you have a quarterback like Justin who is mobile. And there's a couple things in here I think fans will like to hear, because outside zone, you're kind of stretching the field right to the outside. The defense has to flow that way. The defensive linemen have to slant that way. They're kind of chasing to the side that you're designing a run for. What are some of the things that we spent so much time bitching about last year? Okay, the lack of boots, the lack of splitting the field in half, the lack of just
changing launch points, just
spread
it out, baby.
Justin an easy completion on a play action, then flipping it to the other side. Oh, there's a wide open guy on a bubble slant, whatever. Easy read. Or he can tuck it, keep it, and tuck it if he can run for it because he has that ability with his legs. Eberflus painted that out. That's how he described it. He's like, if you get everybody flowing one way and you got a quarterback like Justin who can boot back the other, give him an easy completion or get a screen game going. Screen, the S word, screen.
What's that?
Don't know. But I've heard about them, and I think they're pretty effective. And just hearing him break that down, that one answer, I got excited. I was like, thank God we're not going to be bitching about this stuff all year again because it sounds like now, are they going to be good enough to actually turn that all into points? I don't know. But at least they're going to be doing things, it sounds like that will make sense.
I generally like the idea of Matt Eberflus being able to help Justin Fields from his defensive by providing his own defensive expertise. Telling Justin Fields how he would stop him as a defensive coordinator. I think that relationship is only going to grow. I think it could be invaluable in terms of the learning curve for Justin Fields in year 2. And I think it's just different. A different voice to have, an added voice to have other than just your offensive coordinator, which I like already. You have Luke Getsy, whose sole responsibility is working with Justin Fields, as opposed to Matt Nagy, who tried to head the whole team. So I like the way the relationship building, the dynamic in general, is at Hallis Hall for Justin Fields.
Yeah. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick before we jump into the draft conversation. I found it interesting. I think there are some fair things to wonder about and criticize with some of the acquisitions, lack of acquisitions that have been at play
you just
here.
Have this general feeling that you want more because you want Justin Fields to have more.
Yeah. But I'm willing. You know what? It changes hourly though. 1 hour, I'm like, yeah, they haven't done enough, and then the next, I'm like, it's freaking April. There's a lot of time. There's 5 more months before the season starts.
Here's a good example. The Packers signed Sammy Watkins today. 1 year, $4 million? My immediate reaction is, well, the Bears could have done that. And then my secondary reaction is didn't he sign with the Chiefs the same year the Bears signed Allen Robinson? Weren't the Bears interested in him the same year? Yeah. He didn't really pan out. He's a first-round pick who never became a top-tier receiver. Number one receiver.
He was one of the first people that Buffalo cut ties with when Brandon Beane got there. That's a perfect example of kind of trimming some fat off the roster. And the guy, years later, he signed in with the Pack. Fine.
No, don't care.
Yeah.
My
patience.
You
need the Bears to sign Sammy Watkins?
My own patience has caught up with the Ryan Poles' own patient plan. If I'm just being honest,
you're on board.
I'm patiently on board. Does that make sense?
So take that and think about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, didn't make sense, but
okay.
You get my point.
I gotcha. All right, well, let's jump into the draft talk. Dane Brugler's the best. He's here. It's Dane Brugler's season, and he's here on the Hoge Jahns podcast. All right, well, you've heard us talk a lot about it. The Beast, the author of The Beast, is here. Dane Brugler from The Athletic joins us now to get us ready for the NFL draft. Dane, congrats again on another year of putting that thing together. It is amazing. It is my go-to resource.
Printed copies now.
Yeah.
Well, that one's a little different. That one's not quite the Beast.
Full Beast?
No, yeah, it's like an abbreviated version, but
Mini Beast.
Yeah. So, but no, I appreciate it. It's the feedback's been awesome. Labor of love. It's been really cool to hear everyone's feedback on it. Try to make it, set the bar even higher every year, and hopefully we did it this year. So glad to hear everyone's been checking it out and enjoying it.
When you look at the Bears' positioning, no first-round picks again, and then there's 8 teams in the first round with 2 picks. First, just your first impressions, out of the first round, start with 39th, 40th overall pick. Tell me about that range of the draft just in terms of value.
Yeah, and obviously I think we'll see how the quarterbacks shake out. How many quarterbacks are off the board at that point? That's a big variable that I don't know that a lot of people have a great feel for yet. I think these quarterbacks are going to go early. At least 2 or 3 of them. They always do. Why should this year be any different? But then, how many quarterbacks? We see 5 quarterbacks off the board by the time we get to pick. Chicago's at 39. So, I think that's certainly possible. And if you're Chicago, you're hoping for that. You're hoping the 5 quarterbacks go, push more good players to you. We're going to see a run on wide receivers. How many go in the first round? Maybe as many as 8. It's possible. And when you see how much these wide receivers are getting paid in the NFL, it's no wonder that teams are looking to get younger and cheaper at the position, and they're going to do that through the first round. So which receivers will fall outside those first 32 picks and then into the second round? I think edge rusher is the strongest position this year, and so we're going to see in each round there's going to be at least someone on the board that I think gives you some level of excitement. It's that deep. No matter how many we see 5, 6 go in the first round, there will still be edge rushers, second round, third round, fourth round that give you some level of excitement about what they bring to your team.
Dane, since you mentioned the quarterbacks, I mean, it doesn't necessarily apply to the Bears, but it still kind of sets the tone for how the whole draft plays out. I was thinking recently that the lack of a obvious number 1 overall pick type quarterback in this class sort of reminded me of 2017 when I remember looking at Trubisky and Watson and Mahomes, and wasn't Kaiser in that draft too? Was that the same year? And just going, I don't know that any of these guys are really deserving of going in the top 10. And then of course the Bears reached for Trubisky. Well, when that was all said and done, I mean, Watson and Mahomes, if you redrafted it, are probably 1-2. So that's what I'm struggling to kind of get a grasp on these quarterbacks this year, because there's been that's an example of a year that feels like this year, but yet 2 really good quarterbacks came out of that class.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of a quarterback class that we felt like we had questions about, but obviously, 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL came from that group. I guess maybe this is a cynical way of looking at it, but the year I kind of look at was that 2011? Outside of Cam Newton, when we had Jake Locker, we had Blaine Gabbert, Christian Ponder, all those guys went in the top 12. And obviously, of those 3, none really turned out to be worthy of those picks. And so that's with this group. That's what it reminds me of. It's not as bad as the 2013 year where we had EJ Manuel. The Bills reached on him in the first round, and Geno Smith was in the second. It's not as bad as that. These quarterbacks have talent, but in my opinion, if you're drafting a quarterback in the first round, you better have conviction that he's going to be a top 15 quarterback in the NFL at some point during his rookie contract. And if you just don't, I just find it hard to have confidence in any of these quarterbacks. They're going to reach that level. So, but you know what? I was talking to a scout the other day, and he's like, man, these guys are going to go. It's going to happen. So, where does that run start? Is it Carolina at 6? Is it Atlanta 8, Seattle 9? What does Pittsburgh do? We think they're drafting a quarterback, but are they going to trade up for a guy? Is there a wild card team in there? I don't think the Saints do. People are talking about the Saints since they got that second first round pick. I really think they're going left tackle receiver or using those 2 picks to go up and get a left tackle. I don't think they're going quarterback, but these guys are going to go, and it's going to be really interesting to see where they end up.
You mentioned 8 receivers potentially going in the first round. Bears fans are probably tuned out by now, just angry. How deep is this receivers class? What classes previously would you compare it to? And then, where's the cutoff point for you? Where is the second tier of receivers coming for you in this draft?
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to frame it, is just the tiers. For me, and these receivers, everyone's got a different opinion of the rankings and where they belong. And, it's important to point out, too, that even though they fall in the same bucket as wide receivers, they're all so vastly different, and they're going to fit different teams in different ways in terms of being in an X or being a slot receiver or size, speed, that type of thing. But for me, tier 1 is Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams, Drake London. Those 3 receivers right there. That to me, that's where there's a little bit of a break. And then that second tier is jam-packed with some guys. And that's Chris Olave, Traylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore, George Pickens. So that's 5 receivers there in the second tier. And then I think there's another break. And then the third tier is where you've got your Christian Watson, John Mechie, Jalen Tolbert, Alec Pierce. I think this is a top-heavy wide receiver class. So, I mean, we just went through, a dozen wide receivers. All should be off the board somewhere in the top 75 picks. And I think that this wide receiver class will stretch a little bit into the third, early fourth round. Then I think there's a little bit of a drop-off. I think this is a top-heavy wide receiver group. All these guys are going to go early. And it'll be interesting to see how many go in the first. I think Garrett Wilson, both Ohio State guys are going in the first. Jamison Williams is going in the first. Drake London, so that's 4. Traylon Burks might slip a little bit after his combine was a little underwhelming. Still think he's going to go in the first, so those 5. And then who joins those 5? Jahan Dotson out of Penn State has a very good chance. George Pickens, there's plenty of love around the league that George Pickens could go that early. Christian Watson, who I grade as more of a second or third rounder, he might go in the first because he's 6'4" and runs a 4.3. But I mean, his routes are still very rough around the edges, way too many drops. You want to see a guy at that FCS level dominate if you're talking about a first-round pick, and he doesn't have tape that shows a dominant receiver. So Christian Watson might be overdrafted as early as the first round, but it's just a really, really deep wide receiver group in those first 3 rounds.
So if you're the Bears and you have pick 71, can you afford the wait? You mentioned potentially top 75 there, but if you like a guy, is it better to act in the second round or try to trade back or something like that to get an extra pick? Would 71 be too late to make your move at receiver?
Well, I came out with my 7-round mock draft today on The Athletic, and so let's just I'll use that as a reference point. Obviously, this is far from gospel, but I think it gives just a glimpse into maybe how these receivers could come off the board. In my mock draft, I have wide receivers after 71st pick. Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati going 78. Wan'Dale Robinson going 79 to the Chargers. John Mechie at 81 to the Giants. Khalil Shakur from Boise State going 82. So, I mean, there's still some talent there in the mid-third round that if the Bears want to wait, in the second round, if they want to go a different position, they want to wait till the third round to get the receiver, I think that's certainly a plausible scenario. It's just obviously they won't be able to be as picky in the third round with what's left for them.
Well, let's talk about this mock that you put together. And I can't imagine doing a 7-round mock draft with all 32 teams. So,
Smoke Monday.
good job there. But you have the Bears taking Christian Watson, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State, with pick number 39, and then Perion Winfrey, the defensive tackle out of Oklahoma, at 48. Tell us a little bit about why you like those 2 guys to the Bears in those 2 spots in the second round.
Yeah, after I just got done killing Christian Watson, he's 6'4" and runs a 4.3, and so I certainly understand the intrigue with him. He's a true late bloomer. He was in high school. That's how he ended up at North Dakota State. And he's still developing. He's still learning, and you could see that at the Senior Bowl. He played well, but he's also still learning all the details of playing that position. But again, we're talking about a second-round pick here. We're not talking about a first-round pick. So I think that the value could be there at 39 if the Bears are looking for that go-to receiver. Christian Watson could certainly fit the bill. And then at 48, go with Perion Winfrey, one of the better 3 techniques, but also a versatile guy because he could play up and down that line of scrimmage. A guy that has length, he has power in his hands. You love how heavy he plays, not as a mover, but at contact, he plays heavy. So he can create a little bit of movement at contact. He's a guy nobody at the Senior Bowl, none of the blockers want to face because of all the different ways he can win. The tape doesn't get you excited, but Oklahoma ran that slanting front, didn't really give you a great idea of his traits and how productive he could be. But he's a young player, still just 21 years old. He's a JUCO kid, played 2 years for the Sooners. There's a lot to like about Perion Winfrey and the traits and what he could grow into.
before Hoge lays out the rest of the draft. I'm curious, as you're going through this exercise, and this is an exercise all teams go through, trying to figure out where needs are filled by certain teams and which players they're targeting and whatnot. Like the cornerbacks in that range of the draft. I guess, how many teams did you feel were needy in that area? I look at the Seahawks directly behind them with 2 picks at 40 and 41. Like, just in terms of cornerbacks, who's available there, where that second tier begins for that position. What did you see in the second round?
Yeah, and I think that's I think all 32 teams need cornerback help, if we're being honest, right? I mean, everyone's looking for more depth at that position. And it'll be interesting to see how many go in the first. Obviously, Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, and Trent McDuffie are going to be first-round picks. But then, Andrew Booth from Clemson has been a little banged up, hasn't been able to work out for teams before the draft. Could that cause him to slip to the second round? That's certainly a plausible scenario. Kyler Gordon from Washington, who is still not as technically refined as his teammate Trent McDuffie, but he tested outstanding at his pro day. There's a lot to like about him, and the way he plays, the mentality, and just the athleticism. So I think Kyler Gordon's right there in that mix to be an early second, mid-second. And then you start to see guys that you can poke holes in, like a Roger McCreary from Auburn, perfect example. Throw on the Alabama tape and you see him just locking down guys. But he doesn't have ideal size. He doesn't have ideal speed. The shorter arms are a problem. He's just not going to be for everybody. And so that's going to be a problem for him. But I think the corners, it's not the strongest position this year, but it would be in my top 5 in terms of strength at every point in the draft. About there's going to be at least 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 corners going that second round.
Dane, in the third round, you have kind of a mini run of offensive linemen, a lot of interior linemen. Dylan Parham going off right before the Bears at 67. Then the Bears taking Darian Kinnard from Kentucky there at 71. And then, let's see, Jamari Salyers there, Daniel Falele from Minnesota, the big offensive tackle with the Gophers at 76. I guess let me ask you this way. First of all, feel free to tell us about Kinnard, since you did have him going to the Bears. But also, if you look at what the Bears have on that offensive line right now, which is young guys at the tackle positions, a big gaping hole at right guard right now, just staring at you on the depth chart. Like, how would you handle, which area would you go? Tackle, guard, especially at that spot in the draft if they're not addressing the offensive line until the early third round?
Well, and that's kind of what drew me to DK there in the third round for the Bears, is because he was a right tackle for Kentucky, but a lot of teams view him as better, kick him inside as a guard. And so I think he gives you a little bit of that versatility where he could play either spot. And for the Bears, that you mentioned their youth on the offensive line, their need for a guard. He could step in and compete for that starting job right away. But at the very least, he also gives you some depth at tackle if you need some help there. So I think there could be a possible fit there. 6'5", 320, really long arms, over 35-inch arms. Did a nice job at the Senior Bowl. He was really one of the only blockers that showed some life against Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State, who's going to be one of the first defensive players drafted this year. So I think that there are some sloppy tendencies there that needs to clean up and mature a little bit. But the physical tools, the bully mentality, that's what you get with DK there in the early third round. But this is. I'm glad you mentioned that about there being a run in the third round. That's to me, that's the sweet spot. I think you look at guards, you look at centers, even some of the tackles. There's a lot of those guys I think that are going to be in that late 2, early third round range that project as potential starters down the road, especially at center. There's a lot of centers in this group that I think could be starters, guys with position flexibility that give you depth at other positions. So I wouldn't call it a strength, but at that point in the draft, I do think that we could see a run with what some of the teams are looking for, but also where we project the talent coming off the board.
I think this is a good place to take a question. Threw this out on Twitter earlier. If some Bears readers had some Bears-related questions for you, Dane. This is from Joseph on Twitter. He wanted to see if you could compare Tevin Jenkins some of these second and third round offensive tackles in this year's draft. And if it makes sense to stick with Tevin, instead of drafting another guy on the outside. Like, how does Tevin Jenkins compare to some of these offensive tackles in the second round and third round this year?
Yeah, and I think that's a fair question, because I think that's probably what some in the Bears front office, they're asking themselves the same thing. With Tevin, obviously, a big guy who's 6'6", 320, a guy that played primarily right tackle in college, and you're thinking, what kind of position flex does he give us at the pro level? Can he be our left tackle? Maybe do we like him at guard? He played some guard at Oklahoma State, so he's a guy that was really competitive on tape. He played with power, but at the same time, he didn't move heavy. He played with light feet. So I remember I likened him to Cam Robinson when he was coming out of Alabama as a prospect, a guy that had tackle guard versatility. He's been a solid player for the Jaguars, and I think Tevin Jenkins, as long as he's healthy, can do the same thing in this year's draft with some of the tackles. We're going to see the top four go early with Ickey and Evan Neal, Charles Cross, and Trevor Penning. And then when you get to the second round, I don't love the depth at tackle in the second round. I mean, Bernard Raymond from Central Michigan, he's in that late first, early two range. Tyler Smith from Tulsa. But, I mean, Tyler Smith from Tulsa is, I think, more of a second rounder, not a first, because he's so raw as a player. And so he's not necessarily a guy you want to throw out there early in his NFL career. Abraham Lucas from Washington State is a tackle that from Washington State that has got plenty of experience. 4-year starter, tested pretty well at the combine, ran a 4.9. His short shuttle was great, which we know a lot of teams pay attention to short shuttle when it comes to offensive linemen. And so that I had a third round grade on him. Wouldn't be surprised if Abraham Lucas goes somewhere in the second. But we're going to see some of these tackles pushed up because I think the supply does not necessarily meet the demand when it comes to the draft this year. So I'm not sure that Tevin Jenkins, if he were in this class, he would probably be my sixth offensive lineman, maybe. Probably just behind some of those first round guys. I'm not sure anybody that you can find in the second round is really going to say, oh yeah, this is a better prospect than Jenkins.
I wanted to go back to the wide receivers, because if you had told me like in December that Christian Watson would get drafted ahead of David Bell from Purdue, a guy who, so Bell's a guy who just produces. Per start, he's averaging 9 catches over 100 yards and close to a touchdown a game per start. And then you have a guy like Watson, who's coming from a run-heavy offense in North Dakota State, well-coached program, but only had 43 catches last year, and he's doing it against FCS competition. Like, how much stock, and does it get overblown what happens between January, February, and March? Because Bell obviously did not have a good combine. Watson's been blowing things up, and now it seems like almost like a foregone conclusion that a guy like Watson's going to go ahead of David Bell, who did nothing but produce in the Big Ten. And, oh, by the way, had some matchups against some first-round cornerbacks along the way.
Yeah, Greg Newsome said the toughest receiver he faced in college was David Bell, first-round pick last year of the Browns. And, I think the slogan of scouting is traits over production. You draft traits, you don't draft production. And I think that's the basis of why Christian Watson's going to be drafted well ahead of David Bell. And honestly, I think that when you watch David Bell on tape, you do see those question marks. You do see a player that's not a burner, that's not explosive. And I got killed by Purdue fans in the comment section of every single rankings that I did going back to August. I never even considered David Bell for my top 50 because I just don't see an explosive player, and I like him. I think he's a good player. I'd take him in the third round, but top 50, top 60, not really a consideration. And Purdue fans were kind of bewildered by that. But I think the combine matched what we saw on film. A guy that knows how to play the position, but when you're going up against NFL level corners and everybody's just faster and the game moves so fast, every little bit helps. And so I do think David Bell is still going to be a productive pro. I think that talking to a scout that was at his pro day, he said he had an outstanding workout, just in terms of the positional drills, not the 40, not the vertical, not the testing stuff, but the positional drills where he's going out, running routes, catching passes, he thought he looked outstanding. So even though the times, the 40s don't match up, I still think he ends up in the top 100, goes somewhere second day, third round, that type of range, even though it's easy to look at the testing numbers and kind of be discouraged by what David Bell put up.
Dane, quickly, let me throw a couple names at you that are on my timeline right now from questions. This is from Timothy. Just your thoughts on Illinois safety Kirby Joseph. And then David wants to know about potentially the Bears drafting Troy Anderson in the second round, the linebacker.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Kirby, and I really enjoyed talking to him. Grew up in Orlando. You hear about dual sport athletes in high school. This guy was a big-time volleyball player growing up, and so you see some of that, some of the ups with him, and I think that comes from volleyball. But he was a late bloomer on the football field. He did not start till his senior year. But they played him as this natural, this free safety role where he was single high, and they played him 25 yards off the line of scrimmage because they trusted him. He runs the alley really well. He finds the football. 5 interceptions this year, and I think he turned himself into a afterthought as a prospect into a borderline top 100 guy that a lot of teams are going to look at. So, he even played a little bit of receiver in college just to get him on the field. But he really shined as a senior. I think if you're looking for that single high safety, third round, early fourth, Kirby Joseph, I think that fits the bill. And then with Troy Anderson, I mean, has to be one of the most fascinating backstories in this draft in terms of growing up in a small town in Montana. Class valedictorian, won a state title in 3 different sports. The 100 meters in track, basketball, football. Goes to Montana State, plays quarterback, plays running back. To this day, he ranks top 10 in Montana State history in career rushing yards. Moves to linebacker and becomes the defensive player of the year in the Big Sky in that conference at the FCS level. So, I mean, this guy's just an all-around athlete. He showed it at the Combine, running in the low 4.4s. Is he the most instinctive defensive player? No. And that's where there's a projection involved in terms of reading his keys, understanding what the blockers are doing, beating them to the spot, making plays. Speed will help compensate for a lot of that, but his mind needs to catch up to his athleticism, and that's where there's a little bit of a projection involved as he goes to the next level. But I find it hard to believe he's going to fall out of the second round.
Awesome, Dane. Well, we appreciate your time. We know you're busy. It's NFL draft season. It's Dane Brugler season, quite frankly. At DP Brugler on Twitter. Follow him there throughout the draft. Make sure you're checking out the Beast if you haven't already. It's on The Athletic.
Find the Mini Beast.
And the Mini Beast. And the 7th round mock draft is up today on The Athletic. So I'm sure our listeners will be checking all of it out. Dane, thanks so much, man.
Anytime, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks, Dane.
Hey, if you're like Johns or myself, you probably drink coffee, and there's a lot of different coffees out there. That's why there's Trade, because Trade is trying to find the right coffee just for you. Trade Coffee connects customers to the freshest and best tasting coffee they've ever made at home by partnering with the country's best craft roasters. These are independent businesses from big cities and small towns. Trade customers are truly impactful for these independent roasters, often being the largest source of new growth for them. Expert tasted coffee. Trade's coffee team actually taste tests thousands of coffees to keep 450 different kinds live and ready to ship every day. There's no one perfect coffee, but there is a perfect coffee for you, and Trade's human-powered algorithm will find it. Trade Coffee sends you freshly roasted beans from 60 of the country's best craft roasters, small businesses who pay farmers fair prices to sustainably source the greatest beans from around the world. Whether your friends call you a coffee snob or you just know it when coffee tastes really perfect, Trade's real coffee experts personally taste test over 450 roasts so they know exactly what to recommend for you. Right now, Trade is offering new subscribers a total of $30 off your first order plus free shipping when you go to drinktrade.com/Adam22. That's more than 40 cups of coffee for free. Get started by taking their quiz at drinktrade.com/Adam22. drinktrade.com/Adam22 and let Trade find you a coffee you'll love. That's drinktrade.com/Adam22 for $30 off. All right, guys, I've had my Helix mattress for a while now. Still love it just as much as I did when I first got it. Helix Sleep has a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete and matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. It worked for me. Why would you buy a mattress made for someone else? With Helix, you're getting a mattress that you know will be perfect for the way you sleep. Everybody's unique. Helix knows that, so they have several different mattress models to choose from. Soft, medium, firm mattresses. Mattresses great for cooling you down if you sleep hot. Mattresses great for spinal alignment to prevent morning aches and pains. And even a Helix Plus mattress for plus-size sleepers. I took the quiz. I was matched with the Dusk model mattress, which is on the firm side, but not all the way firm. It's perfect for me. So if you're looking for a mattress, take the quiz, order the mattress that you've been matched to. The mattress comes right to your door, shipped for free, and it's really cool how it opens. You open up the box, it's like it inflates and just rolls out. It's a pretty cool thing. HelixSleep.com/Adam is where you need to go. Take their 2-minute sleep quiz. They'll match you with a customized mattress that will give you the best sleep of your life. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at HelixSleep.com/Adam. Helix even has mattresses with specialized cooling technology. And if you and your family can never agree on the temperature of the thermostat, that one might be perfect for you. Again, HelixSleep.com/Adam.
Now, our next partner is a pretty cool product. Let's talk about Athletic Greens. If you're looking to get better gut health, more energy, a stronger immune system, I mean, who isn't? Well, this is a really easy, natural way, so you got to check out Athletic Greens. I'm sure you'll all agree that most of us are not huge fans of having to take a bunch of pills or vitamins in the morning. But with Athletic Greens, you can get rid of all those extra vitamin bottles and finally make some room in that cabinet. Athletic Greens is an all-in-one solution that actually tastes good. Trust me, it does. So what's in this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, and probiotics to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the good things. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Adams. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Adams to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
Yeah, so make sure you are picking up the Beast. And he did explain, I think, before we got started, Johnsy, that the published version, because he had to go out early for publishing, that's why it's not the full thing.
Condensed version.
So the version you can get on the Athletic, the PDF that you download, is the real deal. I'm sure they're both awesome. But yeah,
I'm really coming around to the idea that the Bears should wait to draft a receiver.
Like how long?
3rd round.
Yeah, I think there's guys there in the 3rd round, like Alec Pierce, like David
Bell. Maybe they have to trade up to 65.
See, and I understand where he's coming from with the traits over production thing. But for me, man, when I see a guy like that just produce from day one, like literally walked on Purdue's campus, played right away, every single game, he's giving you close to 10 catches, over 100 yards and a touchdown, like, and in a tough conference against good defenses. And he's facing
1st round cornerbacks.
Greg Newsome. Like, I got to watch that game. That's a great tape to watch. It was one of my favorite Greg Newsome tapes. But my takeaway from both of those players in that game were like, watching live, I'm watching 2 NFL starters right here, is what's going on. And Greg Newsome got drafted last year in the 1st round by the Browns. David Bell's coming. So, like, I get it. And the guy ran a 4.65 at the combine, which is not great for a wide receiver. But one of our commenters on the CHGO pod today Johnsy brought up how Allen Robinson ran a 4.6.
Cooper Kupp ran a 4.6.
Some guy, Terry McLaurin was another guy like at Ohio State that you just watch the tape, you're like, this guy just gets open, makes plays over and over again. So I understand the traits thing, but I also think like the more and more I watched Christian Watson at North Dakota State, I'm like, this doesn't match all this draft hype right now. It's good, but it's not. It's okay. He blew up the combine, but the tape's not totally jiving with it. And I like him too. I feel like that's a riskier pick. And oh, by the way, he's almost 23 years old. I think will be a 23-year-old rookie. I don't know. I'm with you though. I think
yes.
I also think the more and more I think about it, I will be very surprised if both of those second-round picks get used on offense.
Oh, I think the Bears want to draft the 3 technique.
I think a corner or a 3 technique are both.
And we didn't go into depth about this with Dane, but he said edge rusher, pass rusher is very deep this year. And that's a premier position.
And the Bears need help there. They traded away Khalil Mack.
Robert Quinn's 32 or will be 32. Can't expect him to flirt with 19 sacks again.
Well, that's just not happening. I don't know if there is an over-under on Robert Quinn sacks like out there that you can actually bet on, but like, would you set it at
7.5?
Yeah, I was going to say 8.5. Yeah, somewhere around there. Like, it's a win to me if he gets double digits.
And truthfully, I think it's a win if he gets 8.
Yeah. Which is crazy to think about. It's just not likely he's going to repeat what he did last year.
If you have followed the ebbs and flows of his career,
hashtag ebbs and flows.
I think this would be the ebb down, I think. Is the ebb down or the flow down? I don't know. But this is where
That's your phrase. You tell me.
Well, they're happening. This is usually where it happens. It's like Mike Zimmer's coaching career. A lot of ebbs and flows to that one.
I mean, I don't. You're the ebbs and flows guys. You're supposed to be the one who can explain that.
We need that T-shirt. obviousshirts.com. Got the JD hoodie on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have talked about that one. It just seems like a very niche T-shirt. You know what ended up in my
ebbs and flows?
Ebbs and flows. There we go.
I have to give one of our followers, readers, listeners credit for that one though.
But you know what? Someone, I don't know how it ended up in my feed. Someone liked my Harold Jones Quartet tweet from 2016 when he originally said, "Come out hard and stay hard." And I didn't even realize I tweeted that when he had said it. And one of the responses from somebody in 2016 was, "That should be a T-shirt."
And it is.
And it only took 5 years, but we did make it a T-shirt.
It is a T-shirt
on obviousshirts.com. So that's pretty. I love when stuff from Twitter like that pops up and then years later it comes true. So there you go. All right. Well, we need to get out of here. Follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. You can read me at allchgo.com. Johnsy's on The Athletic along with Dane Brugler. theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns is where you go to get Kevin Fishbane, Dan Pompey, the whole crew. Pretty much everybody works for The Athletic. So there it is, theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns. Also, find us on YouTube if you haven't already. Subscribe, hit the notifications. Probably have some big shows coming up, maybe even some live shows for all we know with the draft and stuff coming on. So we are working through that. Johnsy, you're off next week, huh?
I am. I'm going to miss mini camp. I'm sticking with a family vacation. I'm here to annoy you a little bit with that family vacation, but we are out of here.
Not.
Yeah.
No, don't care.
You care. You'll miss me.
No, I don't.
You'll miss me.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
You will.
I guess Kevin will be working. Kevin will be showing up to Alice Hall.
Have fun.
I will. I'm excited. There's players I want to see.
Like who? Name them.
That was awesome. Byron Pringle.
I'm kidding. I like to see what he could do. Bigger
Yeah.
role.
Well, then you should come to Hallis Hall next week.
I'll follow your tweets.
You can listen to the Hoge Jahns podcast for
I will. With
all
the fish
the
meat.
all the recap.
I'll watch
Actually,
it on
don't.
YouTube on
Please don't.
CHGO.
If you're on vacation with your family in Arizona, please don't listen to this podcast.
Okay.
Just troll us with some photo like I did when I was in Aruba.
It's a great idea.
Yes. But if you do it, make sure it sells some product at the same time.
Yes.
See, you can
Great
make
idea.
fun of me for that photo, but I was told it sold like 15 hats immediately, which wasn't even the objective. The only objective of that was to troll you, which also worked. But it was a bonus that we actually sold some Obvious Shirts hats at the same time.
Someone repeated or reenacted your picture and sent this to us from wherever he was. Did you see that?
I did not see that. When was that?
Oh, look on the timeline. Someone sent us a picture from wherever he was in the Caribbean.
I wish I'd seen that. I gotta find it. Someone's gotta find that and send it to me. I don't see everything on Twitter, but that's one I wish I hadn't missed. So send it to me. All right, we're out of here. Kevin and I will have you covered next week with minicamp and everything, and we'll